Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Leap. Thank you all so much for tuning in every week. I really appreciate it and hope these stories continue to bring comfort and help you through your own grief journey wherever you are. I'm really excited for this interview today because Amy Gray-Cunningham is an intuitive healer and an Akashic Records practitioner, and we will talk a little bit more about what that means in a few minutes. Her mission is to help people fulfill their soul's purpose. She believes we are the creators of our own experiences. Therefore, we manifest the life that we desire. On June 5th, 2021, the day after her oldest son's wedding, her love and partner unexpectedly passed away. They were high school sweethearts and they had dated for 2 years. And then 20 years later, they reunited and they got married on September 26, 2009, and blended their two incredible families. When Chuck passed away, he didn't believe in the afterlife. He thought when you're dead, you're dead. And as a matter of fact, my husband believes the same thing. But Amy tells us that since he died, he has returned over and over again to tell Amy that she is in fact right and heaven does exist, and that it's not quite as far away as you think. So today, Amy is going to be sharing a little bit about what she does, but then really delving into her story of her husband and the messages that he sends her on a daily basis and how her life has really transformed as a result of that. So Amy, welcome to Leap.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm tearing up as you're reading the intro because it was so beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just so excited to be here and to tell my story and Chuck's story. He gets all excited about that as well. So.
I know, I can almost picture him in the background, like right behind you saying, don't forget to say this.
Yeah. Oh, he's so fun. He usually hangs out around my right side. And I always feel him in my right ear. I hear him. And he's always saying, what about this? What about that? Say this, say that. So
Perfect. All right. So perfect. So I'm not too far off when I had
nope.
envisioned him behind you. Talk
Well,
to us about what it means to be an Akashic Records reader. Let's start there just to make
okay.
sure all of our listeners understand what you mean by that.
Definitely. Well, my journey started many, many years ago, about when my son was really young, but I got into the Akashic Records about 5 years ago, and I've been practicing as a practitioner for about 4 years now. And the Akashic Records are basically your book of life. It's everything you've ever thought, done, and said over many lifetimes. And it's housed in this, some people call it a library, some people call it a building. I call it the information superhighway, or DIGS, which is your divine inner guidance system, because it's basically within you. You tap into all of this divine guidance and intuition. It's kind of like your own personal GPS system, which is kind of cool. And everybody has access to it, but not everybody knows how to access it.
Which is why so many people say get into meditation so that you can get into the sensing and get beyond the
Yeah,
egoic mind.
exactly. Well, and actually, it's really, when you go to sleep at night, your soul actually goes into the Akashic Records every night. So you actually travel there and you do a download of the day's activities, everything you've thought, done, and said for the day. And then you can also go to school while you're in there. Your body's resting, but your soul is still off exploring and expanding. So it's
Maybe
really
that's why I'm so tired every day. No, I'm just kidding.
sometimes I wake up and I'm like, what did you
I'm
do
so
today,
tired.
soul? I'm like, oh, gracious, I am tired. But sometimes I'll wake up, and if I have an issue or a problem that I'm trying to really, that I want clear answers on and clear direction, I'll set that intention before I go to sleep at night. And I wake up the next morning and I just know how to do it. I just
Yeah.
sit down and do it.
Tap,
And yeah.
tapping into our higher self or our soul. People have lots of language for it.
Yes, yes, yes. I choose to call it soul, but there's higher self, higher soul, or higher spirit. There's just so many different words. So
So if somebody came to you for a reading, what could they expect? Is it like a half an hour? Is it an hour? Does it just depend on what they want?
It goes about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how many questions they have and how expansive their reading is. But we go into your soul profile. We go in, we ask I always ask for an intention. The intention really drives the reading. So I ask for something that you want to manifest over the next 3 to 6 months, because it's got to be a physical manifestation. And through that, your guides will come in, or the lords and record, or the lords and masters of the Akashic Records, and your guides, your loved ones they'll show me past lives, they'll show me present life issues, and we do a clearing and shut all of those karmic lines down that are in through, so you can really manifest what it is you're looking to manifest. Now, you can also ask questions in the records. What is the purpose of XYZ? What is it I'm supposed to learn? Where does it stem from? What lifetime? I mean, there's so many things you can ask. It's a great way to look for guidance when you're trying to make a decision.
Well, I'm sure that, because I've had mediums on here before. Is it different than mediumship?
It's very similar to mediumship. And actually, mediumship, when you're doing a mediumship reading, you actually go into the records. Having a Reiki session done, the Reiki practitioner is actually going into the records. When you're dreaming at night, you're going into the records. Everything is done primarily in the records. And when I do a reading for people, I open up their records. And when I'm in their records, sometimes their loved ones will come through with messages, or they can ask a question of their loved ones. But it's a different process when I'm actually doing a mediumship reading. I still open the records, but I do go to another level.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for that. And for listeners, we'll have all of Amy's contact information in the show notes. All right, let's jump into, because I really can't wait to get to meet your husband. So share with us your story of Chuck.
Chuck is the love of my life. We are soulmates for many, many lifetimes. We're literally the other half of each other's soul. And I knew that the moment I met him back in 87. And he picked my brother and up on the side of the road. We were walking to the store and he pulled up, and literally my heart sank. And I was so tongue-tied. I didn't know how to talk. And I remember getting in the back seat. He had a brand new Mustang. And I got in the back seat of the Mustang. It's back when, the Mustang, it was like plastic seats.
Yeah.
Stuck to the
I was just going to say your legs stuck to him. Yeah.
And my legs were literally sticking to his seats, but he adjusted the rearview mirror just enough so he could see in the back seat where I was sitting. And I made sure I sat where he could still see me. And he was friends with my brother from they had the same homeroom class, so that's how we met. And we were together for 2 years after that. And neither one of us can really remember why we broke up. I don't know. I have a feeling it had something to do with the blonde girl that I saw him with at the restaurant not long after.
So you guys were in high school still?
Well, he had just graduated, we dated, excuse me, I take that back. His senior year, my junior year, when we first started dating, and we broke up after my senior year. So, and then we got back together 20 years later on Facebook.
That is crazy. I hear about these stories, but it's crazy. And both of you were divorced.
We were both divorced at the time. He had just divorced his second wife, and I had been divorced from my first husband for many years. And literally, I went on Facebook because my son had gotten a Facebook account. And so I wanted to be able to stalk him whenever I, chose to. So I got a Facebook account. And I noticed that the high school that we went to was having a 20-year reunion for his class. And I knew a lot of people from that particular class. So I was looking up and I was trying to see if he was on there. And he was. So I sent him a friend request saying, "Do you remember who I am?" And he said, "Of course." And it was love at first sight again when we first saw each other.
And then you got married back in 2009.
Yes, we got back together in January of 2009, and we got married in September of 2009. And yes, it was quick, but we just knew. And I always told him, I said, "You're going to marry me one day," when we dated in high school. And that may have been why we broke up. I think he got scared. And it took him 20 years, but he finally asked me to marry him.
And then what happened?
We got married in a Castle McCullough in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I married my prince. We had an interesting marriage. It wasn't always the best, of course, but we always chose every day when we got up to love each other. And he always had my back, no matter what. And he still has my back. But my son got married June 4th of 2021. He married his love of his life from college, who I absolutely adore. She's the best daughter-in-law ever. So, Kat, if you're listening,
I can already tell that you're the best mother-in-law ever.
Well, of course. So, and it was really awesome because Alex and Kat wanted Chuck to be a part of their wedding. So they asked him to officiate. And so he got ordained online to do the officiating and everything. And to make it legal, to make sure we made it, they actually got married at the Justice of the Peace a week or two before the wedding. Because otherwise, Chuck would have had to stay around on Monday to sign all the paperwork at the courthouse in Virginia, because that's where they got married. And thank God we did what we did, because he passed away the day after on that Saturday.
And was it a heart attack?
We didn't know exactly what had happened at the time. I remember my aunt saying, "What's going on? What happened to Chuck?" He had gone out on the front porch, and I got up and I ran out there and he was slumped over. And so we didn't know exactly what had happened at the time. I honestly, to this day, I still believe that we were going to take him to the emergency room and everything was going to be fine. And because I called the boys and told them what was going on, I said, but just stay where you're at. I don't know.
Was he still breathing?
He was breathing when I first found him, but I think he was crossing over at that point. And I could feel him leaving. I could feel it. It was very, very bizarre. And what was so interesting is in January of 2021, I literally heard from my guide, start a podcast. And I'm like, start a podcast? Okay, how the heck do you do that? And what in the world am I going to talk about? So they gave me all the information. It's called Butterfly Kisses. And it took me until April to get it put all together. And I was told, have it ready to go May 1st. You need to have it ready May 1st. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what the rush is. So I got it ready and it was ready to go May 1st. And he passed away on June 5th. When we got to the place that we were staying up in Virginia, it was a house. And when you walked up to the house, there's like this big archway that you walked through to get into the front yard. And in front of that front yard, there's nothing but there was thousands upon thousands of butterflies. I mean, butterflies everywhere. And we couldn't believe that there was these butterflies. And it was really funny because they were like, "Oh, Amy, they're here for you." Because my father, when he passed 18 years ago, that was his sign for me, because I had asked him, I said, "Give me a sign so I know that you're around." And it was yellow butterflies. So I would see yellow butterflies at the strangest, craziest times, places. It was interesting. So there was thousands of these butterflies everywhere. And when I left, the day that he passed and my best friend was bringing me home, I remember walking out and taking note. There were no butterflies there. The butterflies were gone. So I really believe those butterflies were there for him.
Wow. So he was super young. He was 50, what, one, you said, or 52?
He was 51. He would have been 52 last year.
So did you ever you must have found out, was it in fact?
He has actually since told me. About a year before then, we had an incident where his blood pressure was really high and he was in the emergency room in the hospital. They ended up admitting him, and they did not a CAT scan, but where they check the heart. I can't remember what the name of it is. And they found an old,
like a stress test or something on his heart.
Yeah, well, the echogram.
Echogram, yes, I just thought of it too.
And they found an old. They couldn't even tell you how old it was. Plaque buildup that. Literally, the heart had created a new artery to go around it. Believe it or not, this is how amazing our bodies are. So it went around that. And what he has shown me since then is a piece of that plaque had broke off and gone and went up to his brain. So it was an aneurysm of sorts or blood clot. But that is what he has shown me. And he said it was very quick. He was in no pain. And literally, when he crossed, he was so excited. He couldn't wait for me to know how great he felt. He was a wonderful, wonderful man, a loving man, but he had a lot of demons that he carried with him. And he struggled with a lot of different things. He was a first responder at the racetrack in Carolina when one of the tires flew off into the sand. And he was there and he witnessed all these people, and he was a first responder. And he never really, I don't think, ever processed that and the grief that went with that. So he carried that. And then his sister passed away in 2014. His mother passed away in 2018. His dad passed away in 2020. And then he passed away in 2021. And so he carried a lot of guilt over not being there when his mother passed, but feeling like he let his sister down. So there was a lot of grief that he never processed.
And I mean, is this his whole family? Did he have any others?
No, that was his whole family.
So his entire family has passed away. How old was his sister?
51.
God, it gives me the chills.
Yeah, she was 51.
And did she die of something similar?
She had breast cancer, and this was many years before, about 15 years ago, or no, many years now, but 10 years before she passed, she had cancer, breast cancer, and then it came back, and she found out that it came back and it had metastasized throughout her whole body on her 10-year anniversary.
God, that's so, it's interesting though. This is the first time I've been doing this work a long time, but that entire family died within years of each other.
It was every 2 years we had a Cunningham pass away. My sons say that they're going to put me in hibernation. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. Trust me. Got too much work to do.
So tell us, like, I'm really excited to kind of jump into, because your husband did not necessarily believe in the afterlife. That's what makes your story so, I call it fun. I know I laugh and joke around on this podcast because we always are dealing with such heavy material, but it's very playful on the other side. They get very playful when we are aware of their signs, right? So talk to us about the signs.
The signs have been, I mean, jaw-dropping at times. I mean, it's just like, wow. And sometimes I wish I had a video camera running 24/7 because I just never know when he's going to show up, which is so cool. And the first time he showed up it was right after he passed. I was laying there with him on the ground, and I told him, I said, honey, I need a sign from you that you're okay. Because I kept looking for him, like he was just going to be standing there. And I knew he was. He's told me after that what happened. But and I heard the word deer, and not like multiple deers, just one deer. And I'm like, okay, what the heck am I going to do with that? I was like, all right, one deer. And we live in Charlotte in the city, but we live in a neighborhood that is like a forest almost. And we have all sorts of wildlife that runs around here in the middle of Charlotte, which is kind of crazy. But we have deer everywhere. I mean, they'll run through my front yard, my backyard. I've gone out to the backyard, and there's been 3 or 4 deer in my backyard, and the dogs, of course, chase them away. So I'm like, okay, one deer. There's never just one deer. There's always 3 or 4 together. And I'm like, okay, honey, I want to see how you're going to do this one. And I came home that day, and that was a Saturday. On Monday morning, so I wasn't sleeping very well, obviously. And I was still trying to process this. And I had, at the time, 3 big dogs. And I got up about like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, because I just couldn't sleep. And I didn't want to wake my sister up, who was sleeping with me. So I got up and I let the dogs out. And this is 4 in the morning, and there's not a sound noise going on outside. And all of a sudden, they're barking at the top of their lungs. Buddy is howling. He's a hound dog, lab hound mix, and he's out there howling at 4 a.m. And I'm like, what in the world? I put my Crocs on, and I go outside, and I'm like, shh, and they're just barking and barking. And I'm like, shh, And they're like, they're not coming out from around the back of the building. So I go over to the back of the building. I was like, get over here. And they come walking up to me, and I start to turn around, and they start barking again, like they're getting my attention. So I turned back around, and as I turned around, this one deer came right up to the fence. I mean, I could reach out and touch the deer. It was that close. All three of my dogs sat down at my feet and didn't say a word.
Didn't chase the deer, which is
no
remarkable.
Yes. The deer and I don't know how long we were out there for. It felt like eternity, and tears are just streaming down my face because I felt his presence. Chuck was there, and he sent me one deer. So, and every now and then I still get that one deer, but now I get feathers. And I have a collection of them here, these little feathers. And it started the day of his celebration of life, his funeral. We all dressed in red and black. His favorite colors were Georgia colors, red and black. He was buried in red and black and his Harley jacket. And so everybody wore red and black. And I got my red purse out. Now, mind you, my husband knew he kept up with my purses, let's just say. The entire time I was married to him, I never bought one purse. He bought all my purses for me. And they were Gucci, they were Prada, they were like the top of the line. And he knew exactly what purses I had, what styles I had. He could tell you. And I went to go buy a purse one time. He's like, oh, no, you've already got that one. I was like, I do? He's like, yeah, get the saddlebag version of that if you want. I mean, it was just funny with the purses. So I got this red Gucci purse out that he had bought me. And I looked in it to make sure that everything was out of it. And I put my stuff in there. Then a couple of days later, when I went to go change the purse back to my old one, in there was this feather.
Whoa. I just got chills everywhere because there was nothing in your purse. And I need to pause here because I always joke that I know there are non-believers, because everybody who listens to me on a regular basis knows I am huge into signs. I think we all get them and we don't necessarily recognize them as such, or we chalk it up to coincidence or whatever. Because there was one time I had just made my bed. I had just cleaned the sheets, the whole thing. Everything was laundered, including the comforter. That's an important part of the story, because when I made my bed, right? Because my brother, for me, it's dragonflies, sunflowers, and coins is a big one for a lot of people. But I didn't recognize the coins as a thing until this day when I had made my bed, and all of us, I was thinking about Rocky. I was talking to my brother, and I'm like, come on, dude, just give me a sign. And I walked in, and there on my bed was a 25-cent coin. And on the date, right, because it's the dates that usually mean something, was the year he was born. And I laughed because there was no way for the coin. I literally had just made the bed. Like, it would have flung off if it were, anyways, it was crazy. And so I love these stories when really spirits can move things, spirits can do things, right? But to find a feather that was not in a pocketbook is just wild and crazy. And most people would really, that is one of those things where it might be this glaring sign and they're like, how did this feather get into my pocketbook? And then make up some story around it.
The key is you have to be open to the signs and acknowledge them when they show up. And when you say, send me another one, they love to send signs and they love to let you know they're right here. I mean, he's fixed my refrigerator. I'm not kidding you. He has fixed my refrigerator. There is no way. And it's kind of interesting because we have one of those split level refrigerators, the one that the French doors that open up and the freezer's on the bottom. And on the bottom of the refrigerator is this big drawer that pulls out. And there were several times that I would pull this drawer out all the way and get it stuck or pull it out, and he would have to fix it for me. And he would always yell at me. Just heard him say, I didn't yell at you. Yeah, you did. And so I had pulled the drawer out too far, and it pulled all the way out. And the little mechanism on the side popped off as well, the little arm. And I'm like, great. How in the world do I fix this? I was like, okay. So I told Chuck, I said, okay, you got to help me fix it. I have no clue what to do. And I heard Google it. I didn't even know what to call the flipping thing. I had no clue what to even call it. So I Googled it and looked it up, found a video on how to fix it. I'm like, okay, thank you for leading and guiding me. Now I left the little arm thing in the bottom of the refrigerator and I put the drawer on the counter. And so I went and got the tools that they told me. And I went to open up the refrigerator. The arm was back on attached to where it was supposed to be.
Okay. Did that freak you out? That would have freaked me. I have to say that would have freaked me out.
I started crying hysterically. I was like, oh
I
my
mean, that is like crazy.
yeah, he fixed my refrigerator. And so I was like, okay. And so I was like, what in the hell? So I just pulled it out and pushed it back in. I pulled it back out again and pushed it back in. And I heard him say, it's working, Amy. I'm like, okay.
So you can hear him. You can literally hear
I
him.
hear him very clearly. Yes, very, very clearly. And so I put the drawer in, and so now every time I go to push it out, or pull it out, he's like, pull it easy, please. Yes.
So I have some questions around this because I know like it's amazing because I'm sure a lot of people out there are thinking, well, how come I can't hear my loved one? And part of it is I mean, I know that we're all born with the ability, we're souls in this body that we have the ability to speak to the afterlife. But the way some mediums have described it to me is some of us just have a much stronger muscle, I guess. It's the only way I know how to describe it. And so my question to you is, prior to the death of Chuck, you were doing this work. Did you hear people from the other side prior to Chuck dying? So
sometimes I heard my grandmother a lot. She's one of my guides now. She's my mediumship guide, and she helps me in the spirit world to connect with spirits. I, of course, heard my spirit guide, Jonathan, and he's a black jazz musician with a little hat, and he carries a saxophone with him, and he always says, "Hey, baby." That's how I hear him. And he always buzzes in my left ear. Chuck's in my right ear, he's in my left ear, and my grandmother's just all over the place.
So I'm sure people are wondering, this is what I am. I'll just keep it in I statements. I am wondering, given that you have this gift, did it help with the grief journey of losing Chuck in the physical world? What was that experience like, being somebody who can connect so clearly with the other side? What was that like for you of losing your husband in the physical realm?
I get chills as you ask me that question, because I went through the grieving process and I still go through the grieving process. There are still times where I miss his physical presence. I miss the man that was here, that I was married to, that, helped me fold the laundry or rubbed my back on occasions or gave me a hug when I needed to or fixed my boo-boos. I still miss his physical presence. But as he tells me, we're still together, it's only different now. And the way he explained it to me made so much sense, because I told him one day, I was like, I can't, I miss you. I miss the physical you. I feel you. I hear you. I know you're here by your signs, but I miss the physical you. How do I move through this? How can I get to where I'm comfortable with the way the relationship is now? Because we're growing, we're still choosing every day to love one another. And that part has never stopped. And what he showed me was very clear. For my last job, I used to travel a lot. And he hated the travel when I would travel, but I loved leaving and going someplace new and different and fun. But I always enjoyed coming home. And the best part about coming home was landing on the runway. As soon as you can turn your cell phones back on, and I would text him, honey, I'm back. And I just knew that he was going to answer me with, I love you, babe. Glad you're home. I mean, that happened every single time. And then as soon as I got my luggage and I got to my car, I would call him. And I just knew that he was going to be at home. And it's the same way now. I just know that he's going to be at home. He's still around and I can still text him, quote unquote. And then he also showed me our house is split. And I have the room over here, which he used to call my she shed. And that's where I would have my room with the TV. And then right on the other side of the wall was his room, the den area with his TV. And so every now and then we would get into how loud can each other's TV go, that game. And I would yell at him, Chuck, turn your TV down. And then he'd yell back, no, you turn the TV down, Max. You know, I couldn't see him, but I knew he was in the next room, and I knew, and I could hear him. And so he says, that's what heaven is like. He's literally in the next room. I may not be able to see him, but I have to have that knowing that he will always, always, always return my text message.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions. Going back to my question about you grieving, did you feel shattered? So, I think that we all have these preconceived notions of mediumship, and when they lose somebody, that somehow it's magically easier for you, and that because you can feel them, you can hear them, most of us can't. We can, even believing deeply that they're around us, it's not like we have this ongoing dialogue. How long did it take you? I mean, after he died so suddenly, did you go through a period where you felt shattered? Was it different for you? What was that early experience like for you after losing him so suddenly?
I was devastated. I was devastated because I wasn't expecting it. At the wedding, it's really interesting because I was there. I went early to get ready with the bride and the bridesmaids and everything. And I remember hearing very clearly from Jonathan, enjoy every moment of this day. Remember every moment. And I thought he was giving me that message to give to Kat. So I gave Kat that message because I'm like, a bride is so excited and the day goes by so fast. Just stop and breathe and enjoy every moment before it happens. Set that specific intention to enjoy every moment. I remember every moment of that wedding. I remember Chuck walking back, grabbing my hand, and us walking down the aisle. I remember the feeling of walking in and the announcement, parents of Alexander Davis, Chuck and Amy Cunningham, and we walked in. I remember dancing with him on the dance floor with his arms around me and the feeling of his arm on my back or his hand on my back. I remember all of that very specifically. That message was for me. Chuck, I think, knew, or at least his higher self knew what was going to happen, because he would tell me weeks before, I'm tired. My body is tired and I don't know how longer I'm going to be around. And I'm like, get over it. What are you saying? I was like, you're going to be fine. You're fine. Everything's fine. And I would dismiss it. I'm hearing him tell me to have compassion for myself. And I do. So when he passed, I was devastated and I did not know how to function. He's literally my right hand. We always worked together. And we always worked well together, and learning how to work with him in the spirit world has been a difficult year. But for me, the first couple of months afterwards, I was in a fog. Other than the deer, he would still send me messages, but he had to go through a healing process on his side, and I had to go through a healing process on my side. And it's been, I think, within the last 6 months that I've really, really been able to connect more clearly with him, because one, I have changed my thought process. Instead of saying, I want to see you, I miss you, I say, I am welcome to the opportunity to speak with you. I welcome the opportunity to see you. I welcome the opportunity for signs. And once I started changing that story in my head, that's when he's come through more and more and more. And he helps me on the podcasts. And
I can't wait to listen to your podcast.
I mean, it's amazing because he's the one that asks the questions. Literally, I hear him ask questions and I have to write them down.
So tell us about Butterfly Kisses then. What is the premise of the podcast? Who are your guests?
It's all about the afterlife, and it's all about spiritual transformation, because I believe that when we incarnate in as a soul, as a human being, we're spirits first, but we're here to awaken. And so we live the life of the ag and the caterpillar, just kind of going around eating grass, doing what we do, doing our daily, the daily grind and doing until we start to awaken a little bit and we go into the cocoon or the chrysalis. And that's where all the work really starts to happen. And we really start to transform. And it's not an easy process and it's not fun. And I think my cocoon really happened when Chuck crossed because it has opened my eyes. And then you emerge as this butterfly, which is amazing and graceful and blissful and just beautiful beyond all expectations. And the thing is once you become the butterfly, you can never go back to being the caterpillar.
I love that metaphor. And I see the butterflies behind you. Yeah, I see them. I don't want to I have got this beautiful story around my mother passing with butterflies. It's another common sign, but I didn't recognize it as a sign until a medium told me that's how she shows up. So when I saw your butterflies, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for this interview. So I know I've got a question that I'm sure others are thinking. You probably know the question I'm about to ask you, but I have to ask. Chuck, forgive me. What if you were to meet somebody new I saw you just suck that. I saw you suck in the air. You don't have to answer it. I'm just curious if there would be room. And it's still, I know that Chuck has not been gone that long, but would there be room in your life?
I don't know. I don't. And that's a question that I've struggled with Chuck, and I've asked him several times. I firmly believe that if I were to meet someone, one, he would bring that person to me and I would know.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, he would definitely bring that person to me. And I firmly believe that. And he's already told me that. Am I ready to open my heart and my life and my world up to somebody else? No, because I'm still, one, I feel married. And two, it is so awesome to get to know Chuck in this spirit form and to have this relationship because he is such the romantic. He sends me flowers.
How does he send you flowers?
It is so amazing because on my birthday, I woke up that morning and he says, baby, I'm sending you flowers. I'm like, okay, how the heck are you going to do that? Now, one, keep in mind, I never got flowers from him when we were married because of his allergies. He was allergic to flowers. So I never once got flowers from him. And now when I'm in meditation, we meet in a wildflower garden. That's literally where we meet. But he says, honey, I'm sending you flowers. I'm like, okay, how? And he says, they're coming from Christine. And Christine's a lady that I do work for. And I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens. So that afternoon around 4 o'clock, I got a delivery of flowers that came to the house and they were from Christine. And and they were beautiful flowers, absolutely gorgeous flowers. And so I called her to say thank you. And she goes to me, she says, Amy, she says, I never send anyone flowers for their birthday. She says, but I just knew I was supposed to. And I knew exactly what flowers to have them put in the bouquet. And she went on the list of all the flowers. And it was every flower that he told me was coming.
Did you tell her that Chuck sent them?
I told her later on, I was like, I think, Chuck was using you. And she's like, probably, because she's an intuitive as well.
That's incredible. I'm just noticing that we're coming to the top of the hour. And
oh, wow.
I know, I knew this interview would fly. I always ask the same question at the end of every interview. But before I ask my last question, I want to know if there's anything that you would like to share with listeners who are deeply grieving, or just anything you'd like to offer that I haven't asked you during the interview.
One is feel all the feels. If you're grieving someone you've lost, there's one thing that you can count on in this lifetime is that you will go through the grieving process. You will lose someone because that is our natural evolution. We are to go home. And it can be very joyous if you choose it to be. You can feel the pain. You can go through the pain, but also feel the joy at the same time. And I have experienced both at the same time where I'm crying, but I'm so joyful because I feel him and I hear him, but I miss the person. So it's literally coming back into the present moment and learning to listen and watch for the signs that they send because they do come if you're open to it. And learning to change my thought process and the things that I say to myself has opened up so many different things for me, and learning to listen to him and hear him.
So when you say change your thought process, I know that you changed the semantics in the way in which you ask the question for signs. So can you just be more explicit when you talk about the way we ask for signs, if that makes sense? Did that make sense the way I asked that question?
Yeah. Well, and the way I ask for signs is very clear. I just say, Chuck, send me a sign. I want to know that, like yesterday, I had the kids over. I felt his presence. I said, honey, I need a sign from you that you were here. And he loves to send signs. All spirits, they just love to send signs. I think it's great. And it's literally what I saw in my head was two of the feathers crossed over like this on my floor by my chair in my office.
It's crazy.
And when I got up this morning, I had two of the feathers in a cross like this on the floor by my desk. Now, mind you, all of these feathers stay on my desk behind his picture. And I woke up this morning and they were in a cross just the way I saw it in my mind's eye. So I just started smiling and giggling, saying, thank you. Always say thank you when you send a sign, even if you think you have a rational explanation for it. Always say thank you, because they like to know that you're grateful for the signs, and they want to continue telling you and showing you.
Oh, thank you, Amy. Okay, so to bring this full circle, I think that I know this obviously firsthand from my own grief work, but I think that when we're grieving, when we're going through the process, it's very difficult for us to show ourselves self-love. So I always ask the question, how do you show yourself love? How do you practice self-love?
That is a really good question. By giving myself grace to be right where I'm at in the moment, allowing myself to feel the feels, allowing myself to be, if I'm angry, be angry. If I'm lonely, be lonely, and just feel them, because emotion stuck causes disease. Emotion is supposed to be in motion, and it's supposed to move through you. And there's never a moment that goes by that I don't think of Chuck. I don't feel Chuck. Do I still wish he was here? Oh God, yes. But the way our relationship is now is so much better on so many different levels. It's different. I can't explain it. It's just different. So my self-love is doing things that I know that he would love for me to do. Go get my nails done or take a bath. But most importantly, give myself grace to be right where I am, because we're spirit first, but we're also very human.
Amen to that. And you guys will have all of the information in the show notes of where to find Amy. But really quick, Amy, can you give us your website and your Instagram channel or whatever social media that you use most?
My website is amygray-cunningham.com, and there's a link to the podcast on there as well. And all of my social media is Amy Gray-Cunningham. Twitter, I think, is Amy Cunningham1, but everything else is Amy Gray-Cunningham. And it's Gray.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing your joy, because that's what I feel with you. I just feel joy emanating from you. And I swear I can feel Chuck. I swear that I can almost see him smiling. And I just want to thank you for sharing who you are, what you do, but also I think just this incredible experience that you have in being able to maintain this relationship, but also that you're human and you went through that incredible sense of devastation and loss that even mediums, even the intuits have to do their grief process. And I want to thank you for sharing that. And also just all of these wonderful signs. So thank you, listeners, for tuning in. I hope that you got something from this. And remember two things: ask for signs and always say thank you to your loved one. That's all for now. We'll see you guys here next week. Bye.